So it's 11 o'clock and here we are on our first live webinar of the year. Different format this time around. We're going to wait before we start because people are joining in right now. But today is hopefully more of an engaging session where we're going to throw out some questions to our chief guest, Lee Robertson from Octo-Members, who's kindly joined us. And we want to get as much interaction from you guys who have taken your time out, and thanks for taking the time out to join us, because it's very much your session to explore what's going on for you at the coalface, if you like, understand any key issues, challenges. Everybody's unique. The pandemic is obviously ongoing. Just talking to Lee before this, I'm a firm believer that we've unfortunately got another year or so of this new normal, if you like, to deal with. So we're very much interested in your views on key challenges. We've named it Resilience Unwrapped. The FCA, as we know, are really, really heavily focused on financial resilience of firms with their, they've come out with, I think that 4,000 firms are at risk of failure this year in the marketplace. So that's quite, sobering to hear in more ways than one. And obviously their concern, as we'll talk about, is about consumer harm in more ways than one. So really, it's a case of what we're going to do is I'm going to scene set with a presentation of what we're seeing, the direction of travel of the challenges that we're still facing in the industry. But we want to put a positive slant on it. And what we want to do is take a look at what are the solutions that firms are using, whether it's technology, whether it's strategy, client engagement, and so forth, to take a look at what solutions there are available for us all, and so we can share ideas on that as we open up into our fireside chat, as it's now been named and coined when we bring Lee in. So I think I'll make a start, and obviously we'll get a few more people joining us as we go. But really, the essence of today is to talk about, as I've said, the direction of travel from a regulatory perspective, and then we can talk about the firm and the business perspective, and obviously client issues, challenges, and opportunities. The FCA have come out with their business plan last year, and they published it at the back end of last year. Really, it looks at 5 key priorities, and I think the interesting thing here is that they're not changing too much from where they were, a year ago. I think the good news with the pandemic means is that they've had to take a step back themselves. So we're not going to see much in the sense of new regulations coming through and new directives coming through. I mean, there's still the threat or the directive that's out there looking at advice suitability, building on their 2017 review. And that's definitely going to come down the line at some stage in the nearish future, but it has been parked because of the pandemic. But the key issue with this is that, they are really focused on technology, holding up the mirror to themselves and how they can kind of regulate the market better using technology, which is our world, the world of RegTech, regulation technology, audit technology, if you like. But also, they are really, really, really interested in your data. And we'll talk about your data in a little while, because your data now, the old adage that data is the new oil and gold or whatever. But at the end of the day, with technology, you can get a far more firmer grip on the quality of your data. And we can showcase how that can help firms that we're seeing in the marketplace that, for example, are our clients on Model Office, how they're using the quality MI and data that they're getting to their benefit and to help them through the pandemic. So the FCA are very much focused on looking at technology, looking at MI, looking at data, and obviously the key issues as well are associated with that is financial crime. And again, I've got a slide on financial crime, which I'll talk you through in a little while. COVID is with us. We have business disruption. We have resilience issues, and the FCA's latest is that I was just saying to Lee before we started that they are now kind of like highlighting in the marketplace that 20% of firms plus are saying that they are seeing a depreciation in their income and in their cash flow, and that is, in my view, the tip of the iceberg, because this is here for a fair while yet. We've got firms now, we know, in the marketplace using furlough. I know furlough has been extended and probably will be extended even further if we read the mood music like in Westminster. But furlough is not going to be here forever. And when that disappears, not only will it be the entertainment sectors and other sectors, it will be retail financial service firms that will obviously feel some pain. So from that perspective, we've got to look at things like business continuity planning, exit, and dare I say it, wind down planning, but making sure that we've got all that firmed up and we've got our systems and controls and policies set. And we've got to ensure from the regulatory point of view what they want to ensure it, and why they've put out 3 financial resilience questionnaires now, and very much focused on consumer harm as I've discussed. But the key issue with that is, I'm just looking at some of the stats here, that they from their last financial resilience questionnaire that they pulled out, they put out to market, 59% of firms were saying that that the pandemic has had or having a negative effect on their business. 59% of firms, not just in our side of the industry, the retail advice sector, across the industry as a whole, and that's huge. And that will continue as we talked about. Now the FCA the good news is that they've put some controls in there to hopefully aid and abet business continuity around flexibility on client ID, the wet to digital signatures, which is great news. The flexibility around the 10% depreciation reporting. I'll talk about the senior managers regime in a minute, because that's also a great enabler for you, if you're getting that right, to showcase through data that you are doing great things with your business, which will have a knock-on effect on, for example, PII renewals, which is the work that we're doing in the marketplace around regulatory levies. So I think we've got a bit of pain to come with COVID. So it's very much keeping our finger on the pulse as practitioners in the marketplace to make sure that that the business is on track and that we're tweaking it continuously. And it's that old adage about time on the business versus time in the business. And we've got to balance that off very carefully at this moment in time. I want to talk a little bit about the regulatory levies conundrum. We're very heavily involved in this at Model Office. And I know Lee and the guys at Octo-Members have got a great initiative around this, which I'll bring Lee in on after I've just finished the scene setter for you. But really what we've got here is 3 things going on. We've got consumer harm, mis-selling, scams, cybercrime, and so forth. That's all on the up. And, you've then got the issue that then breeds high levies and what we call a hard market for PII, professional indemnity insurance. You've also got the fact that there's not many, underwriters left in the marketplace. So, competition is limited there. So from that perspective, we all know that, margins are probably getting slimmer with the business at this moment in time. They're already under attack from these levies. And then, of course, we've got the problems that, the pandemic means that there might be further firm failures. And there may actually be higher levies, even though, for example, the FSCS are saying that they're trying to keep levies as low as possible. But the FCS, just looking at the facts at the moment in their business planner, if you've seen it, we've got an article going out in Professional Advisor very shortly on it. But the budget statement that they have produced in 2022 sees a forecast levy of over £1 billion, which represents an increase of 339 million from the previous year. And there's also, a 78 million supplementary levy, 44.5 million of which has to be paid in February. So there's pain there too that we need to factor in. And the FSCS are really factoring in the fact that there's going to be ongoing increase in complex pension advice claims, for example, in the marketplace. And you've also got failures in the SIP market as well, which they're factoring in. So the problem with it, obviously the knock-on effect of it is, and we have this kind of circle going on where it's the good firms that pay. And in our view, that has got to stop. There are different ways that we can look at this, and we have some solutions which I'll put up on the next slide in a minute for you. But the problem that we've got is the good firms, it's you lot who have to pay. And I think what we need to do is really address that as an industry. And I know, as I say, Octo are doing great stuff on it. PIMFA have got a great initiative on it, as I'll talk about in a minute. PFS, CISI, and more professional bodies. So we need to break this kind of like continuous cycle. And there are ways that we can look at that, as this slide shows. I think the issue is, the first and most important thing is that we need to look at what the rule book says. And what the rule book is saying, if you look at the prod rules, is that the product providers need to ensure that they're manufacturing their products in a way that they're completely appropriate for the distributors to then distribute them, which is you, onto their clients. So your segmentation comes into that, obviously. But the issue is that if they're found wanting, then they should pay a percentage of the levy that's obviously laid onto the marketplace. And that is, I think, a really good argument, and something that we will be pushing for. You've also got to look at the definition of advice. We put out a blog a while back, if it looks like a duck and so forth, and quacks like a duck, and advice is advice, but we've got to look at what the definition of advice is and where it's blurred with guidance and so forth. Because at the moment we've got problems in the sense is, what is advice? Well, the MiFID II definition of advice is, if it's got a product at the end of it, then it's advice. If it hasn't, it's technically going into guidance. So, we've got to ensure that, as practitioners in the marketplace, and both myself and Lee have been IFAs, so we kind of get the pain that a lot of firms are going through at this moment in time. But we've got to ensure that when you are positioning, your suitability reports and positioning the data around why clients are receiving the advice that they're getting, that it is advice. Financial promotions are another issue. In the world of financial promotions, we've got, I'm just looking at the facts here, I think there was 25,000 cases of unauthorized activity with FinProm last year alone. And that's huge. And that will have a negative effect going forward on levies. So again, if we can push for that, and this is something PIMFA are really pushing for, that financial promotions can become a regulated activity. You've got also a push for an online safety bill, which really looks at, how, getting the scams under control in more ways than one. Scams are up by 25% during the lockdown period. Cybercrime is up and so forth. So there's stuff that we can do here and we can push for as an industry, but, it's all about coming together. And that's why I wanted to get Lee on today, because they've built a great, network, which is all digital, which is perfect for the pandemic, where they're pulling ideas together around these sort of issues. And then we can actually, if we get up, talking about ducks, if we can get all our ducks in order then we have a compelling case to put pressure on the stakeholders in the marketplace so that we can get a fairer levy situation. I think more competition is crucial. We're currently working with a new underwriter coming to market shortly on PII, which is great news for the marketplace. There's very few out there who are brave enough to do that. They're using InsurTech, particularly around, and they're focusing a lot on the DB transfer market as well, which I think is brilliant, because there's still firms out there doing it because there is still a demand for it. So it needs to be done correctly. So that's all good. Lower cost services, the old kind of like argument about basic advice, streamlined advice, simplified advice, and so forth is still there because there is a mass market, a massive passive, if you like, who just aren't engaging with you. So again, there is a case for bringing that to the fore. Now, the SM&CR is something which is close to our heart at Model Office because everything that we do is all about competence, conduct, and culture. You know, all the data that's held of the firms that use our technology, our RegTech technology and audit technology, is all about understanding those three things. And it basically gives the evidence to show that firms are walking their talk around that. And if you're getting the SM&CR right, that's going to put you in a stronger position because it's all about accountability. And you're showcasing that you're an accountable business for all the professional practice that you're doing. And you have to meet those standards in the marketplace. Handbooked, clearer terminology. Well, COBS, is not the easiest thing to understand at the best of times. We're doing a lot of work on that at Model Office to make that clearer. What we're doing is effectively bringing in, heat mapping firms to take a look at where the key issues are against all the rules, not just one in, certain silo rules. It's all the rules in one place. And then we then take them, any key issues back to the rules. So you're signposted directly to the rule, and you basically then can hopefully make an informed choice about what you need to do rather than have to Google the rule book and so forth. So, but we do think the FCA can do things there to make the rules clearer. And it's similar with a directory. We don't know how the directory is going to play out yet. It's only just launched. In our view, it's a bit fudged. It launched December, but firms now have to the end of March to get, as they have with the SM&CR on certification and conduct rules, to get things right. But again, we'll be interested to see how that plays out and if does that help on accountability. And recognise industry standards for competence, conduct, culture. I've kind of talked about, and Model Office are very keen to promote that into the marketplace. One of the things that has just being a bit of a regulatory nerd here, I suppose. But one of the things that came out last year was the FCA Consumer Investment Market Review, which I think is going to be interesting. They had a call for input. We on one question alone, we input on what more can we do to ensure that compensation paid for fairly by those that cause the loss, which goes back to that kind of like circle slide that I put up earlier on. And the key issue that the FCA, we think, are missing is that they need to get a firm handle on the firm risk, not just the hard market risk. And it's the same for the PII underwriters. There is a tendency, even though they do, get the data from the business, to look at the overall hard market risk, particularly around pension transfers and structured products and so forth. And they will then add on that levy on like weighting, if you like, onto all the good firms that are still doing good stuff. We think there needs to be far more of a focus on the firm themselves. And the way we can do that is look at data, making sure that firms have all the data in one place so that they can showcase an evidence to the regulators, stakeholders, PI underwriters, FFCS, and so forth, that they are doing really wonderful stuff, which I know you all are. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can look at what hard data is requested and what soft data is available to you. And that's what we do at Model Office. We look at all the hard data, the soft data from a GRC, governance, risk and compliance perspective. If you've got all that in place, then it's really, really, really a compelling proposition for the PI underwriters and the knock-on effect to the levies that actually, you know what, you're doing great work here. So therefore, it can be weighted in the right way. and you will get more, hopefully, preferential treatment at renewal than you currently are, even though you might get some form of discount if you're using support services and so forth. We think that could even be greater and better based on that hard and soft data. The soft data is interesting. You've got people like Rory Percival, ex-FCA professional. He talks a lot around about the color that firms gather in their fact finding around the client emotional journey. That is crucial, and it's crucial to show the regulator and the PII underwriters and so forth all the good work that you're doing in that area. That is so important, because what we've got to do is get under the bonnet of our client thinking, the emotional biases that drive them, and how you're managing that going forward. And you've got their best interests at heart. You've got their back. And the similar thing with how you're managing your business, SMCR, accountabilities, and the judgment that you're making as senior managers in running your businesses on delegation, handovering tasks and responsibilities to staff, training, conduct rules, crucial. Reasonable steps, crucial. And showcasing and evidencing all that in your systems and controls and operations is crucial, because that, again, will have a knock-on effect. Debbie Gupta from the FCA talked about this last year when I attended the Dynamic Climate Conference. She talked about the fact that if you've got the soft facts and you can highlight them in evidence of that, that's going to have a really good positive influence on your PII underwriting procedure and renewal rates. But we do think there's more that can be done, but it's great. The FCA are producing their call for input. A couple of final things and solutions that we're working with in the marketplace. This is probably our most photographed slide at events when we could do events in 2019 going into 2020. And this looks at how advisor firms, how we're promoting advisor firms can segment their clients correctly using the rules, PROD. And this has kind of like a really important knock-on effect, as I've talked about, on suitability, because you're showcasing that you've done a lot of work on the segments of your clients, who they are, what their behaviors are, where they are on their journey, and so forth. So, for example, you're looking at young accumulators on the runway to retirement or at retirement. We still think the industry's got a lot of work to do at and post-retirement, particularly around costing of services. I mean, in our view, you can't cost someone at retirement and beyond the same as when they're on the runway to retirement, because it's a very different proposition. So that is interesting. So product governance is and disclosure and segmentation is crucial. The key issue with this, again, I was speaking to Lee, and we'll talk about this in a little while. Interested in Lee's views on this, but you've got the whole issue regarding new suppliers coming into the product providers coming into the market who are undercutting on cost. Vanguard is a good example, 29 basis points, whatever it is. So, if you're charging, at 1% or 1.5% or whatever, you've got to justify that. And this is a great way to do that going forward. SMCR, I've talked about. What does success look like? What are the FCA interested in? Well, this is it. They're making, they need to know that that who the senior people are in the industry and what they're responsible for, and that's evidenced. Skills, capabilities, conduct, right people in the right place with the right responsibilities. The conduct rules are the foundation of behavior, and it's like a house of cards. If you get the conduct rules wrong, the rest of it will fall apart. So getting those conduct rules trained to the right people between now and the end of March is crucial, as well as certification process. And the conduct rules are really good tools that you can use to ensure that you've got the right culture in the business, the right competence and conduct in the business. Systems and controls, evidence-based practice I've talked about, putting HR front and center now across this is kind of where you need to be. There are a few changes. Pandemic impact at the bottom of that, I guess, are the most salient for today's session. And the pandemic impact is really looking at what's been postponed until the end of March. You've still got a bit of time to get this right, but really looking at, you should be well on the journey now of who, certified persons, fitness and propriety requirements, conduct rules, staff training, as I've talked about. Who are the staff that you need to put through and getting that mapped out and getting on with it. Directory data reporting of certified individuals. If you've got NEDs, non-exec directors, and who's on the exec of the business. And the FCA are already, as I've mentioned, displaying the data as of the 9th of December 2020 last year. You've got an extension on the 12-week rule, which is basically if someone falls ill or you need to replace someone in a senior management position for a period to 36 weeks, which is good news. And you've also got the fact that you can furlough, that if you're furloughing a senior manager, you don't have to reapply for fit and proper. But if they hold an overall responsibility, then the rule book is basically saying that the responsibilities of furloughed senior managers must be allocated to an individual. So that's an important point to note. Staff and key workers, we've still got the key workers, obviously NHS staff and so forth. And if you're an SMF 1 or 24, certainly, a lot of you will be SMF 1s, I'm sure, on today's session. You need to know what your responsibilities are for that and how you are responsible for any key workers you may have. And the statements of responsibilities for SMF staff, they're not enforced if staff changes are only temporary, which plays into the SMF 12-week rule changes. One of the things the FCA are very interested in as well is outsourcing. We all outsource, it's good business practice, but research and due diligence on that, ensuring that you've got the key points here in this slide, and we're recording today's session, I should have said at the start, but this will be made available for everybody at the end. And if you want the slides, happy to send them over as well. So you've got this. But having a good structure and strategy around outsourcing and meeting those rules, Principle 3 and SIS 1.2.1, crucial. To make sure you've got that right. And we all, outsource portfolio management services, DFM services, you've got centralized investment proposition, outsourced compliance and support service and so forth. So this is kind of like front and center now of risk management within your business. Cybercrime, we've got a whole cybercrime diagnostic as well. We have on SMCR as well on our platform. And the picture there, the image there is available on that. And that gives more resource for you that you can engage in. But cybercrime is on the up. Unfortunately, there's a 31% increase in the pandemic. I think it was about 6 million quid last year, back end of last year, was due to cybercrime. And you've got the issue that Companies Act, the senior conduct rules that we just talked about, 1 and 2, the ICO and GDPR, all mean that you need to ensure that your data is strong and robust and secure. And there are huge risks if you don't get that right. Even if you're outsourcing your back office, practice management solution, you can't outsource the risks. The client data is the client data. And many of you under the GDPR may be data processors. So from that one, and data controllers. So that is kind of like front and center now of the pandemic management. Resilience testing, I talked about a lot about this previously, but you need to have this kind of like locked in now into your business. And that is really looking at, all things across risk registers, good governance, risk compliance management within your business, meeting the rules that we've got there. But this is all about understanding, outsourcing governance, as I've talked about, complaints registers, conflict of interest policies, business continuity, planning, cyber resilience, financial resilience, all the stuff that I've talked about. Business operation mapping, again, it's a similar process, but time on, time in the business. Again, very important for you to map all this in. Finally, but not least, there's a great piece of work that's been done by the FCA called the 5 conduct risk questions. And this was aimed at the banks, but I still think it's very important for retail investment advice firms to take this on board, because it gives you a kind of like a framework to manage risk within your business. And it works really, really well. And really, it's all about identifying, the processes that you've got to identify risks, empower individuals accountability to manage the risks. So who, is accountable for those risks, good SMCR practice. what are the mechanisms to improve risk management? What digital tools, risk management tools, RegTech, for example, training and development programs have you got in play, strategic oversight, investment committee, boards, and so forth. And then how you can assess activities that can undermine all the good work that you're doing, whether it's complaints, processes, remuneration, strategy, communication systems, and so forth. So that is something which has been given for free by the FCA. So just a bit about us, we've built Model Office over the last 3 years for the market to actually showcase that you can actually manage governance, risk and compliance all in one place, identify the risks, identify the data, and showcase to the stakeholders that you're doing really good stuff. And the knock-on effect of that is that you've got a platform that brings everything together in a holistic way. You're moving away from swivel chair checklist compliance where, unfortunately, spreadsheets are king. And really then the knock-on effect is what we're doing a lot of work with is, as I've said, on the PI underwriting perspective and the regulatory levy point of view, so that we can actually put pressure on the stakeholders to showcase that it's a firm risk that they need to be focused on, not just the hard market risk. We'll leave it there. We're now going to bring Lee in for this fireside chat. Hi, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Chris. Thanks.
Good. And thanks so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it and appreciate all the good work that you guys are doing at Octo-Members, as I've talked about. I've got a couple of questions to kick this off. And please, if you're on the call, if you've got any questions, fire them in. Lee will be able to see them come in as they go. I mean, the first, given our scene setter, Lee, and hopefully it's not all doom and gloom, we're trying to be as positive as possible because I think there are solutions to be had here. What are your views from Octo-Members? What challenges are they facing and how are they overcoming them?
It's a good question because Octo-Members is a very broad church. So if we, and I think some people are facing the same problems, but advisors particularly are facing their own specific set of challenges. And, whilst you and I were both advisors, Chris, I mean, I take my hat off to the resilience of the advisors at the moment. And the last thing I want to do this morning is come across as preachy or knowing it all. In many ways, I'm really glad I'm not having to cope with this while still leading a practice. So,
yeah,
but moving forwards on that, the sort of challenges are, I think the early days was all about just stay open, keep the business going, migrate to tech, to working from home, to make sure everyone had laptops or home working and all those sort of bits and pieces. And they did that quite well. The things for advisors particularly that are coming through is they've coped very well with that. They've also coped very well with client servicing. But what's really beginning to hurt now, if we set the regulatory and the PI bits aside, is the fact that many practices tend to generate new business from referrals, and that's often done on a semi-social basis, and they're finding hard to do that. So the inflow of new clients is nowhere near as strong as it used to be, and that probably ties in with what you're saying about 30% business down, what the FCA have found, etc. And I do quite a bit of consulting work with practices outside talking about networking and how to do things digitally. And that's not a plug for me. It's just say that it is a really tough challenge to keep for practices that need that inflow of new business. It's quite tough to be generating that at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd be interested in your views, given what we've said about potential solutions here, because I know you interact very heavily with the product providers. What would your view be on the product providers picking up some of the levies?
It's a good one. Ken Davey talks. You mentioned the new resource hub on Octo for that. Ken Davey talks very eloquently about it. I mean, I think for the sector to be presented with £1 billion worth of levy is frankly awful, particularly when we knew what was going on, and the regulator should have known what was going on around the edges. If we talk mini bonds and all that, but not going over old ground. I think the product providers really do need to pick up a bigger share of it. I mean, it's those guys that have built the marble halls over many years. There's not many advisors that have got marble halls, if that makes sense. And that's maybe a slightly crass thing to say, but I think there has to be an equitable spread to support advisors. This is a perfect storm for advisors. A pandemic lockdown, PI insurance hardening like mad, FSCS levies going through the roof, and the tinkering of letting people delay SMCR, delay ESG, talking to clients about that, that's just small beer. I mean, there has to be a way forward for advisors to survive. They do a key thing in society. And if more and more of them go under, that cannot be a good thing. And it won't be good for product providers either. They've got to stand behind the advisor.
Absolutely. And there's the old adage, I think it was Deloitte that came out with a couple of years ago that, there's about, I remember it was about something like 12 to 15 million people in this, high net worth investors are still unserviced. They don't have access to financial advisors. They don't use them for various reasons. And you've got what, 25,000, I don't know, or so RIs out there. So it's very much an opportunity in my view. And yeah, it's hard, it's difficult. We've got the remote working issues, but with technology, as we know, and using things like Zoom and webinars and so forth, that we can get the message across to individuals and clients. And technology done well, it's not magic by any means. And and I know we build it, and but positioned well and built well, it's a great enabler platform to make things more efficient and effective.
I think it is, and Alan Easter. I see the people on the call who were on our virtual drinks last night. Alan Easter was talking very eloquently about technology and reducing the process mapping of just things like onboarding a new client or doing letters of authority, and how technology was really helping there reduce the cost, which he'd mapped really minutely for his new business. So I think it does help. We've tried to help an Octo, things like, we got the head of Otter to do a webinar for us about how to use Otter for meeting notes. And that was one of the things in one of your slides I just saw about keeping minutes and all that kind of stuff. But that is tinkering around the edges, I think. The key message we're getting at the moment is the diminishment of new business opportunities.
Well, on that one, I think, and that's an interesting one because, and I'm interested in your views as well on the segmentation piece, because I think that's a great, tool that firms can leverage to bring that data to the fore, to say, look, we're doing a great work here for the clients. They're getting exactly what they need. It's also, the advice is suitable. And it's meeting their needs and objectives. It's doing all the KYC stuff. So, but on that, we talked a little bit before the call. You do have margins squeezed. You do have resilience issues. You do have new incumbents coming to the market using technology. I mentioned one firm, Vanguard, for example, where they're coming in at 25 to 29 basis points, and there's that streamlined advice approach, if you like. What are your views on where advisors and planners are with their business models on costing, segmentation, and what do they need to watch out for, and what is the good stuff that they're doing?
I think the good stuff that they're doing, starting there, is they're looking after the clients really, really well. And I think we can all cite many examples of our peers. Sorry, I sometimes don't talk like I'm an advisor, of our peers doing great work. So I think that's working really, really well. I think there are firms who are being progressive, for want of a better word, and exploring different fee models to be able to serve different functions. And going back to this thing about the regulator and FSCS and lobbying and things, I think sometimes planners are seen slightly as tax planners for the wealthy. But I think there are lots and lots of young practice owners coming through now with a real social function who want to interact with people on a different cost base. So I think that's really useful. But it's difficult in an environment where people are being hurt by everything that's going on with the pandemic and all these extra levies and hardening PI and that kind of stuff. It's hard to find the time and the energy and the money to put into a new model, knowing that there are new entrants coming. I mean, Alan Easter was on last night, his new business. I can say this publicly. He's very public about it. Funds, platform and advice fee at 35 basis points. I mean, that's very, very tight. Do I think clients are going to leave advisors and planners? Good. I don't actually. But I think as the demographic that we traditionally serve gets older, it might be harder to attract some of the younger people in because of the way that we traditionally have done business. Yeah,
and it's always been that adage. But I mean, there are some great initiatives out there, next gen planners and all that stuff with regard to the younger generation coming through, which has to be encouraged. I'm reading in the press, there's academies coming up for flying around and being built, working with universities and so forth, and showcasing financial planning and advice as a profession. I think is kind of crucial. And you've also got the client needs. As I talked about the scams and the financial promotions and so forth. And then the fact that, unfortunately, phoenixing is still around, and it's being looked at, by the regulator. But again, it's, it's really kind of like open gate, horses bolted. So we just need to make sure that we put pressure on there. But I'd be interested in your views on what Octo are doing around the levy issue, because I know you've got some initiatives going on there.
Yeah, I mean, this was in response to members more than anything. So it's a brand new area. John Lappin works with us. Most people know John Lappin, former editor of Money Marketing and stuff. And he's got a real social view about things. And he's, as an Ulsterman, he also has a very, very strong feeling of right and wrong. And this just feels so wrong for planners. So in response to members, we decided to start a kind of the campaign hub. And the idea is that we don't campaign. It's just to help advisors form their views, hear what other people are saying. So we're building it out. Ken Davies already done quite a big contribution about why he feels product providers need to step up here. We've got Ian from Cicero talking about how lobbying should and shouldn't be done. And there's a whole load more. Liz Field from PIMFA will be contributing. I think she was interviewed yesterday on stuff, because there's a feeling amongst some of our members, some planners, that the professional bodies are less able to lobby in the way that perhaps a trade body such as PIMFA, and that will all be available whether you remember PIMFA or not. And you mentioned their paper earlier. Yeah. But the idea is that we can help inform and engage. David Penny's contributing, and we know that he's very active in encouraging advisors to write to their MPs on these issues, and is getting some traction. So it'll be just that kind of help. We're not campaigning; we're just facilitating people to understand how and why they might campaign.
Great stuff. Final question, because we're kind of like running out of time. What have Octo got planned to keep supporting firms through the pandemic and beyond?
The social stuff, I think, is really important. We get great feedback on that. Wednesday night drinks, very well attended, with over 40 yesterday. Alan Easter was talking. CPD is now available. We all know that CPD is really key for planners. So we're doing that, and we're doing a lot of video around that to make it easier. And you can actually look at it directly from the app. What else are we doing? We're definitely seeking out people who might be able to help. We're showcasing good people, good ideas, and we're facilitating the debate around that. So if we find people doing stuff well, we'll highlight them and showcase to give ideas to other planners who may not be quite so progressed in that thinking. Brilliant.
Well, look, thanks so much for your time, Lee, and hopefully people on this session got lots out of it. We will, it's been recorded, as I say, we'll put it live, we'll send it out on our e-news on Friday, we'll splash it all over social media, and we'll put also Octo-Members contact details on there as well. So any of you who are not members, who are interested, then you'll know where to go. Lee, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.
All right, thanks everybody else, and have a great rest of the day. Cheers.
Good luck, everyone.
Indeed. Good luck.